call the following outside of school: threats, punishments, restrictions, character assassination, graphic sexual imagery. Well, threats would be assault, that's a crime, common law crime. Punishment would be trespass or breach of the peace. Restrictions would be a breach of human rights, the restrictions on speech, movement. Character assassination would be menticide. It's not technically a crime, but it's psychological warfare. Some dysfunctional parents use it because very often they've had it done to them. And it's done in the school classroom. Like I say, that third independent type, the rebellious type, it's done to put them in their place and make them feel shit. And graphic sexual imagery, sexual abuse is what it would be. The police would be knocking on your door if you published and showed the kind of imagery that's being shown to kids. It's sex abuse, grooming. Do you know about the secret additions to the curriculum that parents have not been told about or asked for their consent to? This curriculum change is designed to destroy children's most precious gift. I've talked about creativity and imagination, but the other most precious gift, they have many precious gifts, but the other one is their innocence. I mean, we have the playfulness, spontaneity, it's their innocence. You destroy a child's innocence and you are defiling God. And this is what the satanic agenda is all about. It's a defiling of God. It's laughing in the face of God. Now, if you don't do God, then let's say it's defiling nature, it's defiling humanity, it's a gross crime against humanity. The disruption or the sabotage or annihilation of childhood innocence. I can't really think of a bigger crime that doesn't involve actual murder, if you see what I mean. It's as evil as it gets. The agenda comes in sex education and focuses on annihilation of gender and focus on body parts. The agenda is designed, so this deflowering, this sabotage of innocence agenda is designed to sideline parents and replace trust in family life with a belief in the standards dictated by the state and its agents. Like I was mentioning before about the Spanish system, teachers will no longer have a choice. They have to do sex ed, and it must be the sex ed across the board, but only the sex ed and the magazines and the books that the government supply. The agenda is being delivered by an army of young, narcynical, amoral staff, proud to announce their sexual preferences, their gender fluidity, and show material that would be described as pornographic and get you arrested in some cases outside of school. This is all the response to the United Nations Agenda 2030 and WHO Agenda to legalise consensual sex between adults and children and redefine paedophilia as minor attraction, with 10 as the minimum age for consensual sex. So consensual sex, they're looking to lower it to 10, and there's no age limit for teaching things like masturbation. They're teaching masturbation to children as young as 4. But whichever age they choose, you can see what they're doing. They're just bringing the culture into alignment with their own values, which is that they feed off the energy and the vitality and the innocence of young boys and girls. This grooming extends to woke neoliberal echo chamber. Teachers are now telling children to write to far-right extremists and put them in their place. So there's a grand indoctrination going on. There's only one narrative, that's the far-left communist narrative, and even an inch to the right of that is far-right. If it's not mainstream, it's far-right. It's extremist. It's nut job. MO5 tag teams designed to get children to have zero trust in their own parents. If their parents read the light paper or go on rallies or express dissident views, then teachers will be instructed to groom the children, not sexually but socially and politically and emotionally, to distrust their parents and to distance themselves from their parents. So that when the inevitable happens and it's a lockdown, the school goes into shutdown, lockdown, parents are not allowed into the school, and they're already doing these run-throughs using the excuse that toxic emails have been sent to the school. So we're going to lock down the school and parents can't pick the children up till it's safe again. That's got nothing to do with emails. That's the agenda. The agenda is to lock kids away for long enough to give them the nasal sprays and the jabs. More about that later anyway. Drag queens. What we know about drag queens. And the trespass extends to cameras in toilets, uniform fascism, Themis software. That's the software that enables the teacher to detect an oncoming outburst from the child and take evasive action. Class Charts app is the app that gives teacher a rating using a pie chart of the level of compliance and dissidence and unruliness of the child. Biometrics, 85, approaching 90% of boys and girls only get access to school facilities using their fingerprint or facial recognition. The Insanity extends to MAID, MAID, medical assistance in dying. So we now know that 1 in 10 older teens are suicidal. If things get really bad, then don't worry, the system has the answer. It can give you a good death, because wouldn't you rather have a good death than a life full of misery and pain and suffering? They'll offer that to your granny and to your kids. Euthanasia in Canada is already legal under the heading Medical Assistance in Dying. Resets. This comes as a shock to a lot of people who've not been in school for a while. They're redefining punishment and detentions and calling them resets to bring them into alignment with globalist agendas. Mummy, Daddy, today I had a reset. And they won't realise that they've been punished and that they've been humiliated and that their rights have been trodden all over, because they see it as something positive, because they're being given the feeling that they're guilty and unworthy and of no inherent value. So the reset is for their own good. Do you see where the system is going with this? And when they're 10 years older and the system says, "Come, we have the reset ready. Are you ready for the yes, I'm ready." Well, why are you ready? Because they had the reset at school for 10 to 15 years. They're used to it. Now, to us, it would be horrific, because it would be an instant change in reality. We haven't been groomed, but they're being groomed for it. The danger isn't now. Danger's further down the line. We're just doing the preparatory work so that we can get boys and girls out and make sure that plenty of boys and girls never ever go in. That's how you prevent the reset. This is the most important talk I think I could do, that I've ever done, by a million miles, because it relates to how we counter the reset. Divorce from parents is now possible under a California Bill 655. At the age of 12, you can divorce your parents if they are not in agreement with your re-identification as a different gender. I don't know whether the bill has been passed, but it's certainly going through. And the state will take over, will go into loco parentis, and house the boy or girl, as long as they're over 12, separately, in a physical separation from the family unit. And then we've got emergency lockdown drills that they're pantomiming as we speak, to get children used to the idea of not being able to go home and being locked in, for their own safety. Do you know, one day we're all going to be talking like this, with our hands, doing speech marks, like lockdown, pandemic, for your own safety. I'm psyching up for a repetitive strain injury for doing this. This is a letter. I had it highlighted, but something went wrong. There was a part of it I wanted to read out. It's about parents receiving a letter because CCTV is being installed in the toilets, and the school says the prime focus of this will be to result in a mechanism whereby we can identify those students making poor choices and spoiling life for others. So remember, the system is never at fault. It's only ever us making poor choices. And the rest of us need protection by the system, protection by the system from the naughty, poor choice makers amongst us. It's always us. It's never the system. Sanctions can then be imposed against these students which are, here we go, proportionate and fair. So the system is always proportionate and fair, and it's always remedying the evil perpetrated by us. Because the system, being the ultimate psychopath, narcissist, narcissistic, is never wrong and is always righteous. It's only us. And sometimes I believe that the doctrine of original sin is systemic. Nothing to do with divinity. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. Systemic. The system created a thread, a thought, a meme, a mantra, a trope that would undermine people's belief in themselves. What if keeping a boy or girl at home would not work right now? And reluctantly I have to concede that if your boy or girl is not over a certain age, if they're under a certain age, and you're a single mum or single dad, it's a tricky ask to take them out of school. I used to be way more fundamentalist, but I've now conceded territory, so I've come up with a halfway house remedy for people whose boys or girls are stuck in the firing line. First remedy is to be aware of the Protection of Freedoms Act 2012. Each parent needs to be informed of any use by the school of biometric data. At least one parent needs to consent, and the child needs to consent. And if at any time the child withdraws consent, then all bets are off and we must go back to analog recording of information. So biometrics off. If the child doesn't want, because it's their data, it's their fingerprints, their face. Child says no, end of. But how long will this freedom last? This act is 11 years old. How long will this last, this particular statutory freedom? Remember, if it's a statutory freedom, it's not a real freedom. It's only a freedom that they will happily concede to you because they respect the statutes. So in the classroom, we've got our own remedy. Again, we're using systemic remedy because we could riot, but the system will just make things worse and we'll lose credibility. The boy or girl has been targeted with unreasonable demands, threats or punishments. You teach them, and I've got a card, I'll hand it round at the end of play. It's called the School Protection Card. You teach them to ask politely if they are being given an order or request. So this is what you're teaching the boy or girl. To stand up for themselves, because we're not going to be the ones that face the beast. It's the generations coming after us. People have got the wrong impression. Teach them to ask, is that an order or a request, miss? Is that an order to do detention or give me extra work or redefine my gender? Tell me to sit there, not there. Tell me to shut up. Is that an order? Or is it a request? Well, if it's a request, teach them how to decline a request respectfully or with gentle, respectful contempt. But if it's an order, give them an invoice. Write them out an invoice, because we're in commerce, remember. Give them an invoice for compliance with an order. So here's my dad's invoice, my mum's invoice, or our family invoice, and that's all you need. So you're standing up for yourself using systemic maritime admiralty rules. The invoice for compliance with an order. And it's on the back of the card. There are suggestions of £500 for each minute in detention or whatever. If you are a vulnerable adult and you are falsely imprisoned, you are worth £1,000 a minute. So a child, I've compromised on that. These are only suggestions anyway. You work out what value, unwarranted, unsolicited homework, £250 per subject. Because if you're going to help the boy or girl with the homework, your time is valuable. And their time is valuable. Whatever. You decide what value you're going to ascribe and say, yes, we will comply provided you pay our fees. That's remedy 1 in commerce. Remedy 2, and by the way, that's the subject of a separate video, which is called School Protection Alert. So you've got the School Protection Alert video. It's like an explainer video for the card that you can take away before you go home. Alternatively, so remedy 2 is statutory. Teach them to ask whether the staff member is giving them a choice. Excuse me, give me a choice. If the answer is yes, then we're teaching them to choose wisely and self-responsibly and self-respectfully. If the answer is no, then tell them all about Modern Slavery Act 2015, criminal exploitation. It's the dynamic part, or the active part, is section 1, and the definition of exploitation is in section 3, subsection 5. Criminal exploitation, inducing someone to provide a service using threats or force They're being asked to provide a service, whether it's a homework service or a compliance service, gender re-identity, whatever. And they're being threatened with negative consequences if they don't comply. Or they're being forced to in some way. We don't have criminal coercion in this country. They have it in Canada. But this is the closest we have. Criminal exploitation. Now you may think, ooh, wow, this is a bit dangerous. No, it's not dangerous at all, because you're only using their rules against them. And I know lots of boys and girls who have grabbed the card off me and said, just leave this one to me, thank you very much. And this is where your pushback starts. If I'd have had this card when I was 10, 11, 12, my entire school career would have been different. It would probably have been over in minutes, but then I would have had all kinds of skills that I don't have now because I was too busy burying my head in a textbook. The third remedy for when it kicks off, and it's bound to kick off because we're dealing with narcissism here, or narcissism. Your third remedy is international law, or international legality, let's put it that way. It's not law really. It's international rules. Article 28 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, 1989, quote, discipline in schools should respect human dignity. So if they're kicking off even more and getting more and more offensive and scary and threatening, then this is a job to record, get your classmates to record it, write it down, and it's something that the press might be interested in. Excuse me, the local advertiser or the local press, the local BBC, this school is not adhering to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's not respecting our rights. It's not respecting our dignity. I think that's a little ace up our sleeves. I don't know what you think. We've all been asleep at the wheel, folks. We've had all this remedy all along, but nobody, and I include myself, nobody has got to know about it. It took me a while to work out that the Modern Slavery Act could be used in the classroom. It took me a couple of years to work that one out. Because I assumed, because of my indoctrination, the Modern Slavery Act only applies to human and child trafficking. Well, if you're not being trafficked in school, I don't know what's going on. It is trafficking. It just doesn't look like it. And that's where we need to wake up. Just because something doesn't look like something doesn't mean that it isn't something.